Namo Shri Krishna. Nama Rama Namo Rama Namo Sarimardhana Krishna Namo Sarimardhana Krishna Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Shri Krishna Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Shri Krishna Namo Kimadhana Rama Namo Kimadhana Rama Namo Ukalamadhana Krishna Namo Ukalamadhana Krishna Namo Rama Rama Namo Rama Namo Shri Krishna Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Shri Krishna Rakshaka Krishna Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Shri Krishna Rama Namo Rama Namo Rama Namo Shri Krishna Namo Yashoda Yashoda ke Baba Gopal 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 Chita-chora Yashoda ke Baba Navanita-chora Gopal Chita-chora Yashoda ke Baba Navanita-chora Gopal Navanita-chora Gopal Navanita-chora Gopal Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaveryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. we chant Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verses 45 to 55. Bhagavad Gita chanting together. Verses 45 to 55, chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita. Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nestraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasaha Niyogakshema Atmavan Yavanarthavudapane Sarvata Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Karmanyevadhikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana Ma karma phala ma te sangostva karmani yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate Dureణ ह्यवरं कर्म बुद्धियोगात् धनञ्जय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणाफलहेतवः बुद्धियुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृतदुष्कृते तस्माद्योगाय युज्यस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलम् कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ताः पदं गच्छन्त्यनामयम् यदा ते मोहकलिलं बुद्धिर्व्यतितरिष्यति तदा गन्तास्येदं श्रोतस्य श्रुतस्य च श्रुतिविप्रतिपन्ना ते यदा स्थास्यसि निश्चला समाधावचला तदा योगमवाप्स्यसि अर्जुन उवाच स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्तस्य केशव स्थितधि किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम् श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान् आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते. So we've been studying the topic Desireless actions lead the individual towards self-realization. This is the topic which is running from the verse 45. So we are at the 50th mantra. We have been covering little bit we had covered in the last class. We will be covering fully today. So 50th mantra, 50th verse. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrute tasmad yogaya yujyasva yoga karmasu kaushalam Buddhi yukto jahatiha Ubhe sukruta dushkrute tasmad yogaya yudhyasva yoga karma kaushalam. United to knowledge. The verse translation reads yoga buddhi yuktoha. Buddhi yukta. Yukta means yoga. Yoga is united with the knowledge. United with the knowledge, united to knowledge. One sheds here both good and bad deeds. Both good as well as bad deeds. Therefore, devote yourself to yoga. O Arjuna, Krishna advising, devote yourself to yoga. Skill in action is yoga. Skill in action is yoga. This is the verse translation. We are trying to study and understand what does it mean by this verse message. The verse directs humanity the path of yoga. The world understands the path of bhoga, indulgence, lost in the world, completely caught up, entangled, enmeshed in the world, and crushed by the world, tortured by the world, the stress and strain, worry and anxiety engulfed the entire humanity. The reason, the very problem humanity is facing is nobody is able to understand the technique of yoga. The entire humanity is groping in darkness of yoga means physical asanas and physical fitness. They are not able to understand and practice and master this technique of yoga that Krishna is advising. This is the very old ancient technique of a human being to rehabilitate himself from the clutches of this external world of strife and struggle, agitations and suffering, to peace and bliss and happiness is the path of yoga recommended by Lord Krishna here. The path that unites one to the Atman. The yoga is nothing but union with the self, uniting with the self, joining with the Atman that you are, the Supreme Self, the Atman within you, joining back to what you belong, where you belong, who you are, is the Atman yoga. Humanity at this moment laden, filled with desires, completely caught up in the desires, merely runs after this external world for seeking fulfillment of these desires. And in the process of satisfying the desires, the people acquire innocently, ignorantly, more and more desires. Instead of satisfying the existing desires, they are depositing, they are collecting, they are gathering more and more desires and becoming more and more frustrated, more and more in the process of, because of the desire prompted activities, because of the operating at the level of the desires, they generate more and more desires. You function, you operate on desires, the desires multiply, and the desires further multiply and they separate from the Supreme Self. The desires are what separate from reality. The individual is separated from the reality, individual is separated from God, individual lost the Supreme Self because of the desires, because of the existence of desires. You are born because of desires, you are existing because of the desires, and you are innocently not able to understand and get out of these desires. Therefore, people, entire world, only following the desire prompted activities, which only make them collect more and more desires and get distanced away from the reality, from the Atman because of the desires. Therefore, the path of desire motivated action, the path of desire ridden action, desire propelling action, desire motivated action only takes you away from God, away from yoga, away from the self, away from peace, away from happiness. The desire prompted actions are the culprit, desire ridden actions, but hardly anybody understands. Everyone is completely caught up in the desire prompted actions. They are not able to understand the path of yoga. They only follow the path of bhoga, path of following the desires and acting according to the desires, which is called bhoga. That indulgence, enjoyment, sensuality, materiality, all the worldly affairs. This is against path of yoga. Thus, two separate paths confront you all your life. There are two paths human being is confronting, facing the dilemma of choice, path of yoga and path of bhoga. The path of yoga taking you to the supreme self, the Atman, the ultimate, and the path of bhoga is the mundane path of sense gratification, sensual indulgence, lost in the world, caught up in the world. Path of bhoga, path of yoga is the enlightenment, self-realization. You will have to make the choice between these two. You would like to take the path of yoga or you would like to take a path of yoga. What you would like to take up, that choice you have as a human being. Anyway, action is a must. Inaction is death. If you are inactive, you will perish. Anyway, you are inevitably have to act helplessly. Avashaha. You are helplessly acting. Since you are already acting, it is your obligatory duty, it is your prime responsibility to find out what type of action I must execute in my life. Why should I act? What is the purpose of my action? This must be crystal clear in your head. The choice, only human being has this dilemma of choice. No other creature has this choice of action. All creatures, all living beings except a human being have that predetermined. Only human being has to make the choices in life. The dilemma of choice is faced by human being. All other species, all other living beings have a built-in program, a predetermined, computerized, fixed pattern of life. They just happily live and die and they have no choice. They are free from this thraldom of bondage and suffering. They just live and die. Human being ought to make the choice. He has to live on the choice. So, all the tiger cannot be a vegetarian. If the meat is unavailable, it simply dies. A cow cannot be a meat eating. It is simply grass is not available, it will perish. So this is the example. But a human being has the wide variety of choices. But the question is, on what basis a human being makes the choice? What is the knowledge? What is the know-how? Hardly anywhere this knowledge, this know-how has been taught. Neither the schools, nor the colleges, nor the government. Everywhere they are utter darkness of ignorance, and they are making the choices based on the ignorance, and the consequences are deadly. They are suffering with stress and strain and depression and divorces and directionless and dimensionless and lost in the world of quagmire of suffering and suffering and suffering. This is because of the lack of knowledge to make the right choice of action, except in this path of yoga, the path of Vedanta, path of knowledge, the technique, the know-how. the expertise is given in this mantra, the yogic path. Therefore, this wondrous gift of choosing your actions, Krishna advises the path of yoga. Path of yoga. By choosing the path, you rise above the realm of good and bad deeds. You are neither caught up in the good deeds, good actions, nor you will be caught up in the bad actions. You will be extricated. You will be completely free from this bondage of this good and bad actions. If your actions are propelled by good actions, you will be creating good vasanas, good deposits, and good have a lifestyle and of good births and deaths. You are caught up in the same cycle. Whereas if you operate in the desires of bad actions, you create bad vasanas, bad deposits, and bad karmas, and you will be repeating the same life cycle of birth and death and birth and death. There is no freedom. These two are against the path of yoga. The path of yoga is union with the Supreme Self, which is neither good nor bad. The actions are neither good nor bad. Then that action is called path of yoga. You are following the path of yoga. So here is the good and bad deeds create bad and good vasanas, which are inherent impressions constituting the individual personality. So the way to gain the enlightenment, the way to gain the peace and bliss is to get rid of vasanas. First, you reduce the vasanas by treading the path of yoga. So, when the desires propel your actions, acquire good. If you are good actions, you get the good vasanas, you acquire. If you perform bad actions with bad vasanas, you will be acquiring. But when you rise above the world of good and bad, that is above the desire prompted activity, means what? You have to have the intellect fixed to the higher ideal, which is the Supreme Self in this context. If you fix with the intellect, the self as the goal, and channelize your actions, direct your actions towards the achievement of that self, then obviously you will be neither interested in creating good desires, good vasanas, neither you are interested in bad desires, bad vasanas. You are interested in reaching the Atman. You are interested in gaining the self-realization. So, this is the path of yoga. This is the technique. This is the skill. This is the art. This is not easily achievable. You have to learn and practice it. The yoga is not a casual post-retirement pastime. It is the full-time awareness of reality. You must learn and practice. That's why we always recommend to understand it is a process of study and practice. You have to learn that skill. Any skill, any art, any technique, you have to learn and practice. So, here the path of Krishna advising to eradicate your vasanas. So, what is this? The knowledge of the self. You have to seek the knowledge of the self to eradicate your vasanas and merge with the self. That is the skill in action. That is the technique that steers you clear of these terrestrial entanglements and ushers you towards the transcendental, which is self-realization, God-realization. So, the purpose is to fix the identity first, fix the goal, fix the ideal. Here, fix the self as the goal, then only it is called yoga. Or else you are just treading the path of bhoga. Bhoga means the world as the goal and acquisition and enjoyment with the desire prompted actions. You may be performing good actions, may be unselfish, may be sacrificial, but they create good desires, good deposits, good vasanas. You are still caught up in this world of bondage, of birth and death. There is no freedom. There is no true development. There is no action actual growth in your personality. The personality growth only measured by how much you are risen above the world, grown above the world. How to go above the world? Only through fixing the ideal of the supreme self and function. You do, it doesn't matter what you do in life, but how you do it. Is it your actions propelled by desires, or is it action propelled by the intellect and the self? What is the prompting force is the question you must verify all the time in every action. Then you will be treading this path of neither good nor bad. Punya apunya vivarjita pantaha. The path of neither good nor bad. That is the only path recommended even in the Bhajagavindam Adi Shankaracharya to get the enlightenment. Similarly, in the path in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Krishna also gives the same idea. The technique that steers you clear of terrestrial entanglements and ushers you, pushes you towards the transcendental. So, verse 48 states the previous verse, equanimity of the mind is yoga. Here, dexterity in action is yoga. So, if you combine both, you will be able to understand the true definition of yoga. Yoga is not just physical asanas and physical fitness, which vast majority believe and they follow. There are only two things the whole world follows. Everybody keeps asking me, are you meditating or doing yoga? Are you a yoga teacher or meditator? So they will be all the time caught up in the misconceptions of spiritual practices. The actual practice is technique, the skill, what is taught here. Equanimity of the mind and skill in action, dexterity in action, both combine to form the definition of yoga. The mind must be peaceful and the body must be dynamic with the help of this path, which is neither good nor bad. Once you tread onto the path, the commensurate to your efforts, you will be experiencing the bliss, peace, and gradually ends up in enlightenment. This is the actual spiritual growth, and you will be able to free from these vasanas and desires. So, skill in yoga, skill in action is yoga, and equanimity of the mind is in yoga. Both combine to form the combination or the rare thing. So, on a careful study of this word, you find only there are two types of people. Either they are peaceful but no action, or people who are active but no peace. The combination, how to combine peace and action, that is the technique. So, this is where the whole world is lacking. The Western world is one side of the people who are Western world who are dynamic but no peace of mind. The Asian countries, they are very, very peaceful lot, happy lot, whatever way they are living, but they have no action, no production, no prosperity, no growth in their life. They are poverty stricken, starvation, suffering. So where there is a peace, there is no action. Where there is action, no peace. The technique you recommended by this mantra, by this verse, Lord Krishna, is to combine both at the same breath. The people all over the world is either active and peaceful. Rare, both combination is very rare. So Bhagavad Gita gives the blueprint of the yoga, which will combine these two aspects of life, whatever we are discussing now, the action and peace together at the same time. You should be dynamic in your action at the same time, perfectly tranquil in your mind. There is no agitation at all. Slightest agitation should not be there in your mind. That is the technique we are talking about. So it presents you the technique by which you live a life of dynamic action and maintain perfect peace of mind. You hit the pillow, within 20 seconds you must fall off to sleep. at least sometime you should fall off to sleep few minutes. But how to get that one? Only through learning and practicing this great technique recommended by Lord Krishna. So now we get on to the verse 51. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchantya namayam. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchantya namayam. So the verse translation: the wise united to knowledge, buddhi yukta, united to knowledge, renouncing fruit of action, phalam tyaktva, having renounced the fruit, liberated from the bond of birth, indeed reach the state of beyond evil. So Manishinaha, the wise. Manishinaha means the wise people, liberated from the bond of birth. Janma bandha vinir muktaha. Janma means birth. Bandha means bondage. Janma bandha vinir muktaha. Liberated. Muktaha means liberation. So the wise united with the knowledge. The moment you gain the knowledge of the Supreme Self, knowledge doesn't mean knowledge of the world, knowledge of the reality, knowledge of the Supreme Self, knowledge of God, renouncing fruit, liberated from the bond of birth, indeed reach the state of beyond evil. Reach the state beyond evil. Nama yam, anamayam, beyond. So, what does it mean? We are going to learn this mantra, this verse. The preceding verses indicate that as we discussed the two paths, path of yoga and path of bhoga. The path of yoga alone will take you to the enlightenment because it has neither good nor bad. It takes you to the neutral path of desirelessness. So desireless actions lead you to self-realization, God realization. So the paths of humanity to choose life, the path of yoga which unites one to the Supreme Self, and the path of the world which stains you with the vasanas and desires and caught up in this life cycle of birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, jatare shayanam. Yahasamsare, bahudustare, krupayapare, pahimurare. Repeated birth, repeated death, repeatedly lying in the mother's womb, told by Adi Shankaracharya, because of desires. These desires are unending, and desire prompted actions, everybody is caught up. And no clue what they are doing. They are just increasing more and more desires by following the desires. This is path of bhoga. Whereas the path of yoga eradicates desires, extricates you from the bondage of the world. That is path of yoga recommended to choose the path free from the strains, the path of yoga which unites one to the Supreme Self, and the path of the world which stains one with good and bad vasanas, personality impressions. The wise choose the path leading to the self. So the question is, are you the wise or not? If you are wise, you choose the path leading to the self. They set their minds on the ultimate goal of self-realization. Who? The wise people people with a strong intellect alone can fix the identity, fix the goal of the self, and direct all their actions towards the achievement of the self. That is their minds fixed on the ultimate goal of self-realization. They oblate, they offer all their actions, pour into, they call it Purnahuti. They pour their actions, emotions, and thoughts, all their personality to the fixed goal. Their interest and attention lie on the supreme state of enlightenment and no other interest, rather than the immediate benefits of their actions. They are not interested in the results or the fruits of their actions, because their goal is very clear, their purpose is very clear, and they know what the action takes them to, and they just perform their action and leave the rest to the God, the Supreme Self, as it were. They don't have any interest. Phalam tyaktva, no interest even in to achieve the self. They just concentrate on the self and function, and they don't even bother about when they will get the self-realization also. The result is dropped. No interest in the result. Thus, renouncing the fruit of their endeavors, they act without ego and egocentric desires, because the ego and egocentric desires are the cause for the deposits of the vasanas, further and increasing this suffering and agitation and caught up in this life cycle. So they function, they act without ego and egocentric desires until they reach the exalted state of immortality, the birthless and deathless state of enlightenment. They don't compromise, they don't have any other focus, they have only enlightenment and enlightenment. There is no other short of it. The wise people, the wise, they have that quality of concentration, the state of liberation from the bondage of birth and death. That state is immortality, is nothing but beyond birth and death. Whenever there is a birth, there will be a death, and when there is a death, there will be birth. This is the cycle going on. So the moment you fix the identity beyond birth and death, which is a state of enlightenment, then it is called immortality. So the liberation, that state liberates you from the bondage of this. So the fourth state of self-realization, beyond the realms of this waking, dream, and deep sleep. So we are all caught up in the three states of consciousness because of our desires and vasanas, which is again another way of explaining the birth and death. At this moment, you are the waker experiencing the waking world, and when you go to bed, you will be experiencing either the dream or deep sleep. So the dream, you become the dreamer in the dream, and you experience the dream world, and in the moment you cross that, you go to deep sleep and experiencing void, nothingness, emptiness. So this is the cycle going on. Any point of time, any human being, what is that he is going through? Either waking, dream, deep sleep, waking, dream, deep sleep. It's just a triangle, a mad cycle going on, and no clue how to wriggle out of it. That is the technique what this Bhagavad Gita recommending to get out of this cycle of work, waking, dream, and deep sleep, and get to the fourth plane of consciousness, which is beyond waking, dream, and deep sleep, the transcendental reality, which is the immortality. This final state transcends all evil. Evil here represents the vasanas, the tendencies, the desires, unmanifest desires. The desire is the cause for the birth, and desire is the cause for the agitations, desire is the cause for suffering. So human being minus desire is equal to God. God plus desire is equal to human being. So therefore, Evil is nothing but the vasana, which is nothing but the desire. So, the final state, this final state of enlightenment, the transcends all evil, means transcends all vasanas, because there is no more desires, no more vasanas. It refers to vasanas. So, vasanas constitute everybody's inherent nature, innate bent, the proclivity, the propensity is what you are made up of. That is vasanas. In fact, vasanas, that which makes you what you are. This form is the seed of your personality. It is like a mango, mighty mango tree with millions of leaves and stems and branches, trunk and all the, the parts and parcel of the tree entirely packed in one small seed, mango seed. In that mango seed, everything is there. Similarly, your entire personality, your waking state, your dream state, your deep sleep state, all packed in that one set of bundle of vasanas, the tendencies, the causal body, the karana sharir. This is what the inherent tendencies. They form the seed of your personality, creating the individuality. Right now, whatever we experience, your individuality, your world is nothing but your vasanas. Your vasanas create this individuality and this world. And when these vasanas are exhausted, when the vasanas are eliminated, when the vasanas are destroyed, like a seed is burnt away, then there is no sapling or tree emerges out of the seed. The roasted, the moment seed is roasted, burnt, the seed cannot germinate. Seed cannot flourish as a tree. So therefore, when the vasanas are exhausted, the individuality is merges with the Supreme Self, the totality, the reality. Just as the famous example is given. What is the famous example? A river entering into ocean. This is the famous example we have to study and reflect and contemplate. We are the river's life. Our life is like a river. Imagine every river, a mighty Ganges, mighty Godavari, mighty Krishna, or Mississippi, or mighty Nile. All these rivers have an individuality. They have a specific course of path to traverse. They begin somewhere, they cross the various hills, valleys and plains and keep on traversing their course until they merge with the ocean. They unrelentlessly, constantly, continuously they travel. Similarly, a human being, consciously or unconsciously, he has got his own personality, individuality, is continuously traveling, continuously progressing, unknowing towards the river, towards this ocean, like you are traveling towards the ultimate infinitude of Atman, the Supreme Self, the Supreme Peace and Bliss. This is whether you are aware of it, whether you are not aware of it, whether you are conscious, whether you are unconsciously, you are searching, you are seeking towards the peace and happiness, which is the enlightenment. So, this individuality is to be guided, directed towards the enlightenment. Then only this individuality merges with the totality. The individuality is the Namarupa, this name and form. You have a name and form like a mighty Ganges. Ganga has a name and it has a form. So the moment it enters into the ocean, the Ganga becomes the ocean. There is no more Ganga. There is no more Godavari. The Ganges. There is no Ganges anymore inside the ocean. Similarly, the moment you merge with the Supreme Self by eradicating all the vasanas and desires, By treading the path of yoga and reach the enlightenment, you experience the supreme peace and bliss. From there is no more birth and death. You are permanently liberated because you have no more vasanas to create further births and deaths. This is what he meant to say. The vasanas constitute one's inherent nature. They form the seed of one's personality, creating the individuality. When the vasanas are exhausted, by the path of yoga, vasanas are exhausted, the individuality merges with the totality, with the Atman, with the infinite Brahman, the Supreme God. Just as the river merges with the ocean, river enters into the ocean, the individual regains his infinite being. The individual regains his infinite being. You regain your original nature, your true nature, your real being, your Atman. That is your actual nature, Satchidananda. That is what you are supposed to achieve in this lifetime. Since vasanas are responsible for reducing the infinite being, infinite reality to the finite, limited being, they are said to be evil. Why the vasanas are called evil? Because the evil is associated with vasanas because you are the infinite being. You are the Satchidananda. You are the infinite peace and bliss. You are the ultimate state of happiness. The self, that supreme self right now experiencing a finite. That infinite became a infinite, limited, conditioned, restricted, imprisoned, caught up in this thraldom, bondage of birth and death of localized, limited individuality. This is caused because of the vasanas. Therefore, the vasanas are called evil. The moment you get rid of the vasanas, you regain your original state of peace and bliss of infinite reality, the Atman. So, the vasanas create and sustain the individual. If there are no vasanas, there is no individuality. You become Brahman. You achieve infinite immortality. The vasanas form the causal body, Karana Sharir, which is the seed of the individual. This is just a repetition. This causal body, Karana Sharir, this vasanas, this unmanifest desires, these vasanas, these desires, this individuality creates this subtle body. This manifests as a subtle body. This seed body is just as a mango seed creates mango plant and then mango tree. It becomes a sapling, plant and a tree. Similarly, your vasanas, your causal body manifests, expresses as a subtle body, that is Sukshma Sharir, consisting, the Sukshma Sharir means what is it made up of? It consists of thoughts and desires, mind and intellect. The Manasu and Buddhi is the subtle body made up of. The subtle body in turn determines the gross body. The thoughts and desires create your physical body and the world outside. So the gross body consists of the body and the environment for the fulfillment of those vasanas which you are born with, the causal body. Set of causal body, set of vasanas create the intellect and the physical body and the environment to fulfill those vasanas, those desires. The environment. So the subtle body in turn determines the gross body and the environment. Environment and the environment become the fulfillment of desires. When the gross body and the subtle body, when the gross body and the environment become inadequate, when the death occurs when your gross body, physical body and the environment is inadequate to fulfill the desires. inadequate to satisfy those desires. To satisfy your desires, the subtle body, the mind and intellect, the subtle body, along with the causal body, takes a new gross body. They drop the old body, which is the death of the previous one, and takes up a new body, new physical body, suitable for the purpose of fulfilling those desires. The transference of the subtle body from one gross body to another, spells the death of the previous body and the birth of the new one. This is called birth and death. How the birth and death happens? People have no clue how the birth and death happens. Birth and death happens because of the transference of the subtle body with the causal body from one gross body to another gross body. Birth of the new one, death of the old one. The moment subtle body leaves the gross body, this body is dead and takes up a new body. This is what the birth and death phenomena. So the transference of the subtle body from one gross body to another spells the death of the previous body and birth of the new one. But when the vasanas, these are because of causal body, vasanas and desires, because to fulfill the desires, new set of desires, this body is no longer useful, adequate. Suppose if the vasanas are completely exhausted, desires are completely nullified, removed, eradicated, what will happen? There is no propelling force, there is no desire for this body to drop a new body to take up. Therefore, the complete eradication of vasanas, the birth and death life cycle ends, and you will no longer take a birth. This birth itself is the end, and you reach the immortality, birthless, deathless state. So, but when the vasanas are exhausted, desires are extinct, the individual gains the total liberation, total freedom from the cycle of birth and death, which is the evil vasanas in this context. Vasanas are completely eliminated and you are the supreme self state achieved. So this is enlightenment, freedom from birth and death. We will take up the verse number 52. Yada te mohakalilam buddhirvyatitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. Yada te mohakalilam buddhirvyatitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When the intellect will cross the mire of delusion, when the intellect will cross the mire of delusion, then you will grow indifferent to what has been heard and what is yet to be heard. So, the translation, yada tada, yada when, tada then. This is the typical dialogue, typical education. When, then is the words used. So, when your intellect will cross the mire of delusion, when the intellect crosses the mire of delusion, then you will grow indifferent to what has been heard and what is yet to be heard. It's very interesting. What is this? The verse talking about now. The three distinct stages mark the evolution of a seeker from his worldly entanglement to spiritual enlightenment. There are three stages of evolution from the entanglement to total liberation. There are three stages, marking three stages. The first stage depicts the typical person involved in the world has lost the sight of Supreme Self and fallen into the mire of delusion. We are all caught up in this first stage. Everybody. What is that? Lost the Supreme Self, the Atman, and caught up in this world of perceptions, emotions, thoughts, body, mind, and limb. Life of birth and death. This is the illusory world, imaginary world we are caught up. This is the delusion. We are all under the delusion, the deluded people. And therefore we are experiencing the world where there is a reality and Brahman, we have no cognition, we have no recognition. The Supreme Self we have lost. Just as a boy in the dark treads on a rope, experiences a snake. He projects a snake in the dark. He misunderstands the rope for a snake. That snake is projected by his own mind's delusion because he lost the recognition of the rope. There is a rope and rope alone lying there. But he doesn't have knowledge of the rope. He is ignorant of the rope. Therefore, he projected an imaginary, illusory snake and he is caught up in that snake bite and suffering consequences of poison and other. Similarly, friends, we are all caught up in this delusion and this delusion of the reality, delusion of the reality and projected this fantastic pluralistic phenomena of the objects and beings, and this life goes on. So, typical person involved in the world who has lost the sight of the Supreme Self and fallen into the mire of delusion. Such a person who is fully deluded, what he is having, he is full of desires. He lost the sight of the self and full of desires. Desires for the world. And he needs the path of karma yoga. Such a person's starting step is to get to the enlightenment. The first treatment is given is karma yoga, path of action, because he is full of desires and is deluded and lost sight of the self. So the yoga, path of karma yoga, actions dedicated to the self, body dedicated to the self-realization, God-realization, karma yoga, that will reduce the bulk of desires, bulk of vasanas, desires. So the first stage is reduction of the bulk of desires. Then what will happen? With the reduction of desires, he develops a relative disinterest in the world. He is not rushing, hurrying, worrying like everybody. He will be a little bit indifferent, disinterested, vairagya, lack of interest to go all the time outside. Now we are all experiencing forceful vairagya. You are not allowed to go out only from the home. In this scenario of people who are expected to stay home, those people who are having more desires, they are agitated, frustrated because they want to go out. The desires are pressurizing them to push them outside. Such people can't stay in this lockdown period, in this quarantine, or stay home. Don't step out. How many times anybody says the cases are rising, the people are going out, gatherings are going on, everything is going on because of desires. These desires within you constantly pressurize you to go outside. Everybody become extroverted because of the condition of their bulk of desires. The first step of spiritual growth is reduction of bulk of desires through karma yoga, actions dedicated to the self. When the body is committed, dedicated to the self-realization, God-realization, the bulk of desires will be dropped, will be reduced. Then the next step is the disinterest, a dispassion towards the world set in, a sense of dispassion, a sense of renunciation. This will be helping the human being slowly to turn from extroversion to introversion. Then he has to go through another 2 stages we will be covering in the next class. Thank you very much. Hari Om.